Hi everyone, we are super excited to introduce a new So Powerful Purse sewing tutorial. So I would love to have you follow along with me as I show you how to make the new 2018 So Powerful Purse. Now if you're not familiar with the So Powerful Purse project, this is a really cool project that we introduced a few years ago. It intertwines seamstresses from around the world with the ladies at the sewing co-op in Zambia that we set up a few years back. So we have two parts. The purse is your part. It is your opportunity to take what you have and make something meaningful that gets gifted to a girl in Zambia. And the seamstresses are doing their part. They are employed and they are making reusable feminine hygiene that goes inside the bag. And then the whole thing goes together and is given to a girl in health class. So she is gifted with the supplies she needs to stay in school all month long. And when she receives it, she makes a promise to do just that. So I really hope that you will join us in this effort to really better the lives of girls in Zambia and help them further their education. All right, so let's get started sewing the So Powerful Purse. Let's begin with a look at all the pattern pieces needed for this project and the fabrics that we have cut out. So you can see in front of me right here, I have 6 pattern pieces. We have the purse flap panel, the small slip pocket that goes inside the purse body front. We have the large slip pocket for the front and the back of the purse. We have the purse top back, and then we have the strap up along the top. Now the pieces are all clearly labeled to instruct you how many to cut out. So for the flap, we have 1 fabric, 1 lining. For the purse body front, we have 1 fabric and 2 linings. And if needed, you can cut 1 interfacing if you're using a lightweight fabric. For the slip pocket, we cut 1 fabric and 1 lining. Then for this pattern piece over here, it is the same pattern piece for 2 different pieces referenced in the pattern piece C and pattern piece F. So we have cut out 1 fabric and 1 lining for the slip pocket that goes on the front of the purse. And then we've cut 1 fabric and optionally 1 interfacing for the back portion of the purse. And then the top purse back is just cut 1 fabric and 1 interfacing if you need it. And then the strap, we have used this template to set the width, but it is cut at a length of 50 inches long. So as we work our way through this demonstration, you'll notice that all of the exterior purse fabrics are this floral print, and all of the lining fabrics are this geometric print. So this is a quilting cotton, and this floral fabric is a heavier weight fabric that does not require interfacing. So you can see here, this is a finished purse. It is done in a fabric with a coordinating fabric for this front flap. So the flap itself is just 1 solid piece of fabric. It's lined, and then the purse itself has a slip pocket on the front, a large main pocket with a tiny slip pocket on the inside that you can apply to the front or the back. And the sides are sewn with a side seam and a box pleat to give the purse its shape. Just a few quick notes before we get started on the pattern. There are a few variations for how you could construct the pattern, how you could cut your pieces out, and exactly what supplies you're using. So I just wanted to touch on that quickly before we move forward with the tutorial. So with the pattern pieces that are like this, we have C and F, that is the same piece cut out different ways, and then we have pattern piece E. Those are the ones with the markings for the box pleat. So you can decide which way you want to cut that out. In the step-by-step pattern that you print out and view as a PDF, we have all of the corners notched. It's very easy to tell the bottom of the pattern piece from the top of the pattern piece when you notch those corners and then use that as your guide to sew your box pleat when you get to that step. In the video, I'm just going to show you how to go through, and instead of cut out all the corners, we're just going to notch those lines, and then when you get to the point to sew your box pleat, you know where to sew your line and you just cut this part out after. It's just preference, whichever way you like to sew your box pleat. One method might seem clearer or easier or faster. It depends on what you like to do, but either are fine. So you can do either method. Another thing that is good to know to swap out is the strap itself. So we have here a fabric strap that is cut out and ready to sew. But a lot of people have found that they like to use a product like webbing. So this is something you would see on a backpack, and it comes in a 1-inch wide strip. So you can buy this and cut this 52 inches long and just use this in place of the fabric strap. It's a lot faster. It's very durable. It really just comes down to if you have it on hand or if you want to order large quantities so that you have it on hand all the time in a variety of colors. Home Sew is a great website. They have offer discounts. You can go into the So Powerful Facebook group, the Purse Project Facebook group, and you can get more information on that. So that's a great resource for those straps. And again, it is a quick and easy way to move forward without having to sew a fabric strap. To begin, we are going to start with pattern piece A, the flat panel. We have the fabric and the lining both sitting right sides up, and we are simply going to put them right sides together, pin around 3 sides, leaving this top section open. Then I'm going to take this over to the machine, and beginning at the base of the flap, I'm going to stitch up to my first curve, pivot with the needle in the down position, curving this corner, come around the bottom, and then pivot around the opposite corner and come all the way back up to the other end of the flap, leaving this base open so that I can turn it right side out. Once you've sewn the flap, you can come in and grade your seam allowances so that when you turn it right side out, you don't have a bulk layer that's right inside your seam line. So take one of the 2 pieces of fabric and trim it so that it's a little bit shorter of a seam allowance than the other layer. So as it's turned right side out, it will have a gradual decrease in thickness towards the interior of the flap. Then up at the curves, you're going to want to cut into the seam allowances a few notches to allow this to turn smoothly. Next, we'll go ahead and turn this flap right side out. So again, the floral side is the front outside fabric of the purse, and the lining side is the geometric print. So we're going to take this over to the iron and press this to finish off all the seam lines. You can take a point turning tool and push that into the corner to have a nice smooth curve on both sides at this front end of the flap. And then we will run this through the machine, top stitching from this open end all the way around to the other side of the flap. And now that we have this flap finished and top stitched, we are going to set this aside and work on the strap. To sew the strap out of fabric, we have our strip here. This is cut 50 inches long. It's 2 3/4 inches wide. We are simply going to take the length of the strap, fold it in half with right sides together, and we are going to stitch the entire length of the strap all the way to the opposite short end, leaving this base open to turn it right side out. Now we have the full strap sewn, the length of the strap and one short end. I'm just going to cut a tiny little slit into this fold side. And then you can use a turning tool or something simple like a bobby pin. I slip this right inside here, and it goes in through that first part, and then it slides right inside that slit to the inside of the strap. And I'm simply going to use the bobby pin as something that I'm gripping, and then it will roll back onto itself, and you can turn the whole entire strap right side out. Just keep scrunching along, and you're grabbing that bobby pin or turning tool on the inside, and it will continue to roll back. All right, then you can see here we're getting to the open end. I'm going to carefully pull this out, and there I have the strap. And at this point, it will simply roll out all the way and be turned right side out. Then I'm going to roll this with my fingers so that this strap seam is going down the interior center, the full length of the strap. Next, we're just going to press this strap with the seam down the center. Then we're going to take this strap over to the machine and edge stitch or top stitch along both long edges of the strap. Then we are going to set the strap aside and we will work on the large slip pocket and the small slip pocket. So we have the large slip pocket cut, 1 fabric, 1 lining, with right sides face up, and we're sure that we have this sitting so that the top is at the top and the side is at the side. The top edge of this shape is a little bit longer, so we have 9 inches across the top and 8 inches on the side. So you're going to want to make sure that you are sewing this along the top edge of the large slip pocket. So we are going to put fabrics right sides together. We will pin and stitch along this top edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. That seam is stitched. We're going to go ahead and just grade this seam allowance as we did on the flap. We will then flip this to be right side out, and you will just roll this seam so that the edge is slightly to the inside so that the lining does not show on the front side of the purse. Then we will go ahead and press this seam line. Then we've gone ahead and top stitched along the top edge of this slip pocket. So we have the lining side and the fabric side. So the sides and the base of this are not sewn together, it's just sewn together along the top edge. Then we're gonna set aside the large slip pocket and bring over the small slip pocket. This is pattern piece D. We have cut 1 fabric and cut 1 lining. We have the 2 pieces of fabric right side up with right sides together. We are going to line them up on all 4 edges, and we will pin around 3 sides and about 2 inches into the base. So at the bottom of the slip pocket, this is going to be my starting and my stopping point. I'm going to go around the perimeter of the entire pocket with a back stitch at the beginning and the end and pivoting at all 4 corners. Here's the small slip pocket stitched around all 4 sides with an opening at the bottom. You're going to need to just clip the corners, and then you can work to turn this right side out. You'll want to use your point turning tool to come inside and push all of these corners out so they're nice and sharp. And again, if there's too much bulk in your seam allowance, you can trim that and grade those seam allowances down to have a nicer corner. Once you have it turned right side out, you're going to want to fold the seam allowance in at the opening in 1/4 inch, and then go ahead and press around all 4 sides of the slip pocket. Then we're going to take this over to the machine and top stitch just along the top edge of the small slip pocket. And here you can see that top stitched top edge. This is the purse fabric side and this is the lining fabric side. The base of this is still pinned and the bottom 3 edges are not top stitched yet. So we're going to set this to the side. And we're going to look at the pieces we have cut for pattern piece E. So as it said on the pattern piece, we have cut 1 fabric and cut 2 lining. So we have a lining for both the front and the back. And I'm going to set aside the purse fabric so we can work on the lining piece. So I have 2 lining pieces. And for this next step, I am just going to be using 1 lining piece. I'm going to take the small slip pocket with the purse fabric side up. So it will be lining right sides together, and I'm going to set this on top of the lining fabric. I'm going to line up this top finished edge of the small slip pocket 1 3/4 inches down from this top raw edge of the purse body lining, and it is centered on both sides. Then I'm going to work to pin this in place on both sides and the bottom edge. Now I'm going to take this over to the machine and I'm going to start with a back stitch, stitch down the side, pivot with the needle in the down position, stitch across the bottom, pivot all the way up to this top side, and then back stitch right here to finish. And here we have the interior small slip pocket sewn to the lining, and you can see it is open on the top and it is stitched around all 3 sides, and then that opening along the bottom of the pocket from when we turned it right side out is now sewn shut while we top stitched it down to the lining. And we will set this aside and we will bring over the purse body front, which is pattern piece E, and this is cut from the purse fabric. Then we're going to bring back over the large slip pocket that we sewed from pattern piece C. So we have the fabric side and the lining side, and we are going to place this right on top of the purse front, lining up the bottom edges and the sides. So you're going to see that this creates a pocket that is down from the top edge of the purse front. Then you'll pin around the 3 sides, and then we will baste just shy of the 1/4 inch seam allowance around these 3 sides. If you baste to the inside of the seam allowance, you will not need to remove it when you sew your final seam. Then once we have the edges basted together, we're going to set this aside. Then we're going to bring over the pieces that form the back of the purse. So we have pattern piece F, which is cut 1 fabric, and pattern piece G, which is also cut 1 fabric. So both of these pieces are going to be sewn together to form the back of the purse, which will be the same as the purse front, with the same seam line that will line up on the front of the purse and the back of the purse where this front pocket is created. On the back of the purse, it will simply be a finished seam. Now to construct the back of the purse, we will be inserting the purse flap inside this seam line. So here we have the bottom part of the purse back, the top section of the purse back, and the flap of the purse. Now this fabric right here is the finished side of the purse, and the geometric print is the lining. Now when the purse gets put together, the flap is going to fold over to the front of the purse, so you want to have the right sides of the purse fabric on the exterior of the purse. So to sew these together, we're going to set this centered along this top edge of the lower purse back, and then we're going to sandwich that in between this upper purse back. So the purse bottom back and upper back are right sides together, and this flap is right sides together with the purse back, but lining side up. So we're going to pin this seam line along the top edge and then stitch this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And here we have that stitched through all 3 pieces. So you can see that folds up to the top, and now this flap can go up over the back of the purse to the front of the purse. So we have a pretty thick seam allowance here. You're going to want to come in and grade this so that it turns nicely to the inside and isn't really bulky and hard to top stitch through. So you could cut out the seam allowance in layers to help reduce the bulk along this seam line. Then we're just going to press this seam allowance down towards the bottom of the purse. So we'll flip this up. The seam allowance all points downward, and then we will press that seam line. Then you're going to go ahead and just top stitch through all 3 layers with that seam allowance pressed down. So the flap is up, and now this is the back portion of the purse. And then we have the front body of the purse, and you can see now how this seam line will line up with this front exterior pocket that's on the front of the purse. Now we're going to set this aside, and I'm going to bring over both lining pieces for the purse body. So this one on the right is the one we've already sewed this slip pocket to, and I'm going to have this be the back side of the purse, and then this lining will be on the front side, the inside of the purse. We have both lining pieces right sides up. I'm going to put them right sides together, lining up all 4 sides, and then we're going to pin along both sides and about 1 inch or 2 inches in towards the bottom. This bottom section we're going to leave open so that once we're done attaching the lining to the purse body, we can turn it right side out. So do not sew between this bottom area of the lining. Using the pattern piece as a guide to form the box pleat, I'm going to cut this out after I sew it. So I have this placed on here, and I'm simply going to notch into the seam allowance just above this cut line, and then these will show me where to stitch my line for my box pleat after I sew these right sides together. Alright, so here we have the side seams of the lining stitched and a little bit into the base with that bottom section open. Now to form the box pleats, you can see I have notches on both sides, and I'm simply going to spread that apart, push my seam allowances open on both the front side and the back side, and I'm just going to match those up, and I can do that just by feeling. I can feel that they are lined up. So then we are forming a triangle at the corner, and then these little notches were my cut line from the pattern piece. So I'm just going to stitch a 1/4 inch inside of that, a straight line directly across this triangle. Now you can see with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which I can use the edge of my presser foot, the notches are right here, and I'm simply going to line that up and then stitch straight across this triangle. So there we have the stitched box pleat, and then I'm going to trim that right along the cut line. And that is going to create the side shaping and the bottom shaping for the bag. Once you've gone ahead and finished both box pleats on the base of the purse lining, you're going to want to go in and press all the seam allowances open. Now we're going to bring back in the purse front and the purse back. These are sitting right side up. I have the purse flap extending up away from the top of the purse. So with this seam line and this pocket stitching lined up, we are going to place these right sides together, lining up the sides and the bottom of the purse body. Now, as we did with the lining, we are going to stitch down to the corners, but this time we're going to stitch all the way across the bottom of the purse and up the other side. I have notches cut into my seam allowance so that I can then form the box pleats on the corners of the purse body. All right, so we have the side seams and the bottom seam sewn for the purse body. And now I'm simply going to pull this apart, making sure that I have the pocket with the purse front and then the back of the purse separate. So I've slid my hand inside, and then I'm going to press open this box pleat, lining up this seam allowance and this seam allowance with the seam allowances pressed open. So again, the little notches are my cut line, so I'm just going to line that up with the presser foot and stitch a 1/4 inch up to the inside of the purse. Then the same as with the lining, you will just trim out this corner to form your box pleat. And then if I flip that right side out, you can see how that looks from the right side, giving it a nice shaped corner at the bottom of the bag. Then you'll repeat that for the second corner, and then we will work to press the seam allowances open along the sides and the bottom edge of the purse body. Now I'm going to bring the strap back over, and we're going to attach that to the purse. So I have both short ends of the purse, and I'm going to mark them 1.5 inches up from the end, and I'm just doing that with a piece of tape. You can do that with a marking tool or a pin. I have removable design tape just so that I can see 1.5 inches up from the base. And then also to make sure that my strap doesn't get twisted, I'm going to fold this in half and then just wind up the top a little bit and just clip that to keep it from getting twisted, but I still have enough strap to work with to attach to the sides of the bag. So I'm going to take the purse and the strap, and with right sides together, I'm going to set this on the side seam. So for this project, the right side of the purse strap is the side without the seam line in it. So this 1.5 inch marking is so that I can have that extend past the purse up away from the top edge. And that is going to allow me, when it's turned right side out, to have a little bit more strength down in this area where I can sew a nice little decorative X stitch, and it will reinforce that strap from being pulled out of this seam line. It'll also help to shape the side of the purse to line up with this box pleat at the bottom. So with right sides together, I'm going to set this right here, lining that up centered with this side seam, and I'm going to pin this in place, and then I can remove the tape at this point, and I'm just going to baste that to secure. So here you can see that strap now basted down, and that extra inch is going to turn to the inside when the strap is up above the purse. So we've gone ahead and basted the strap down on both sides of the purse body. Now I'm going to bring the lining back over. Now I've tucked my strap inside this front pocket. I'm going to just open up my lining and slip the full purse inside the lining with right sides together. So we push that all the way down inside, and you can feel the corners of the bottom lining up, and then you're also going to want to make sure that you have the flap inside the back. So tuck that down out of the way, and we're going to line up all the top edges, being sure that the side seams are lined up. So we're just going to work to pin this all the way around this top edge of the purse. Now I'm going to take this over to the machine, and I'm going to stitch around the entire top opening of the purse, being sure that my straps are still extending that 1.5 inches beyond that top edge. And here we have that completed stitching all the way around the top edge of the purse. Now we're going to come down to this opening in the lining, and we're going to pull the purse out through that hole. So there we have the purse body, the flap, and then here is that interior lining and the strap that was tucked into that front pocket. Then we're going to finish up the final details of the purse. We need to sew this opening in the lining closed, but before we do that, you just want to make sure that you have all of your box pleats nicely formed and pressed, because once you sew this shut, you won't really have access to the inside of the bag. So just double check. You can press, you can use a turning tool to really push those out nice and smooth. Then we're just going to fold the seam allowances on this lining opening to the inside. You can pin and top stitch this, or by hand you could slip stitch this closed. So here we have the opening stitched closed, and I am going to open up the purse and then just push that lining to the inside. So I can push down until my corners fit right inside each other. And then you can see we have the top of the purse beginning to line up. So now we're going to take this and press it around this top edge, just rolling the seam allowance a little bit so that the lining is just to the inside. You don't want to see that from the front side of the purse. So we're going to work our way around, press that nicely, and then we will top stitch around this entire top edge of the bag. Now I'm at the machine and I'm ready to top stitch this, and for the best look, because this is visible from the outside of the bag, it's better to top stitch this with the purse face up. So if you can't remove the portion of your machine, that opens up the ability to roll this around like this, and it can slide underneath and then roll around so you can see what you're doing. Then you're going to want to turn your purse inside out so that you can top stitch this really smoothly and evenly. So I'm just going to begin my top stitching just before my strap, and I'm about 1/8 of an inch down from the edge. Now, as a final step, we're just going to sew a decorative box around the base of the strap where it is inside the purse and the lining. So we're going to sew a box with an X in the middle on both sides to secure that strap and add strength to this seam and the functionality of the purse. So I have my needle in the down position, and I'm going to stitch my first row across right on top of the top stitching I just did, and then I'm going to pivot at the corner to line up with the top stitching on the strap and come down just above this pocket line and this seam line. And there you can see that finished decorative strap reinforcement. And here we have the finished top stitched edge and the straps that are reinforced on both sides. So we've gone ahead and then just pressed this a little bit to give it some shape. But here you have a finished So Powerful purse. All right, so we've done it. We finished sewing a So Powerful purse. Now you can just jump on over to the website, get the address for where to ship your purse, and be sure to include a note card written to the girl. This is really an opportunity to speak some truth and blessing and encouragement to a girl that might not hear something like that from anybody ever. So again, thank you for coming alongside us in this project, and together we are changing the lives of girls around the world.